Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, and welcome to our webinar, Innovate, Optimize, Succeed, Revolutionizing Field Operations and Asset Maintenance in the Energy Sector. My name is Gary Stom, and I'm going to be your host for today's exciting discussion. We appreciate each and every one of you taking all the time from your busy schedules to join us. And in today's webinar, we've tailored a show here to focus on field service professionals in the energy industry. We'll explore the challenges associated with field operations and asset maintenance and discuss how innovative approaches can drive efficiency and overall success. As you all know all too well, effective field operations and asset maintenance are essential for energy companies to ensure operational efficiency, reduce downtime, to maximize the lifespan of really valuable assets that are out in the field, and ultimately to keep people safe. And so today we'll delve into the transformative potential of a collective Salesforce, Youreka, and Diabsolut solution to overcome these challenges through innovation. I want to kick things off by letting us know that this webinar is brought to you all by the Trifecta partnership. That's what I'm calling it, is the Trifecta of Salesforce, Youreka, and Diabsolut. These three organizations are renowned for their groundbreaking contributions to field operations and asset maintenance, especially as it pertains to the energy industry. First, we to chat a little bit about Youreka.
So at the kickoff here, the first thing I want to make sure everybody knows is this.
Thank you very much, Sonia. Please mute if anyone else has any audio issues, let us know. Nonetheless, let's kick things off and chat briefly about each of these three organizations. First and foremost, Youreka is our the #1 native smart forms application in the Salesforce ecosystem. Sonia, if you will, can you advance the slide? Beautiful. And really what we do is we help upskill technicians through complex guided procedures out in the field. And we make this data available on or offline for any of those technical users. Quick introduction, next slide please, around Diabsolut. Diabsolut's a system integrator. They've been around for about 20 years and they have a collection of certified solution consultants and they are really the implementation experts. They help customers leverage the Salesforce platform to solve valuable and complex field use cases, and they do so on a daily basis. And then, of course, we all know all too well Salesforce, who has hundreds of thousands of customers. Salesforce provides us with the leading world-class platform that we all know all too well. We get great value out of and we love today. Now, I'd like to take a second here and introduce our esteemed partners who also will be speaking in today's webinar. First, we have Jason Olbekson. He is the Industry Go-to-Market Director of Energy at Salesforce. We also have Naeem Khalid. He is our Vice President of Professional Services at Diabsolut. And alongside of Naeem, we also have Peter McMullen from the Diabsolut team. He's a seasoned solutions consultant on the team as well. As I hand it off to each of you gentlemen, please give everybody a quick bio about yourself and then dig into your portion of the content as well. Now let's take a look at our agenda for today. We're gonna start, I'm gonna hand it off to Jason here in just a minute. I'll ask him to discuss some of the unique challenges that energy companies encounter while they're trying to optimize their field operations. Following Jason, we'll hand it off to Naeem, ask him to take us through some of the groundbreaking solutions to address those challenges that Jason will mention, especially as it pertains to asset maintenance and how we're able to overcome any of those challenges. After we gain some of those insights, we'll then switch gears, hand it over to Peter, ask him to demonstrate the synergy between the Salesforce Field Service application and Youreka to ultimately have a great understanding. So we'll start with some of the challenges. We'll address some of those challenges with some solutions, and then we'll ask Peter to see those solutions in action with a brief demonstration. Then after our demo, we'll warm up with a quick fireside chat, and we'll leverage the extensive experience of Jason and Naeem as they discuss real-life use cases in the energy arena to show us how these innovative solutions will work with actual boots on the ground. And then we'll open up to a quick Q&A. We would ask you all to engage, and please feel free to do so. There's a QA icon at the bottom of your screen in the Zoom, or chat any questions you might have. We'll be monitoring those throughout. We'll make sure that we address each of those towards the end. All that said, long-winded run-up. Without further ado, I'd love to hand it off to Jason. And Jason, if you will, please guide us through some of the unique energy challenges that we're seeing in the marketplace today.
Thanks a lot, Gary. Really excited to be part of this trifecta, this powerful trifecta you talked about. A little bit about me. I'm responsible for the Salesforce go-to-market strategy for our oil and gas practice based in Houston, Texas. What people may or may not know is Salesforce has been heavily involved in this industry for 20 plus years. It's one of our fastest growing industries across the value chain. We work with operators, services company, refiners, retail fuels, upstream E&P, etc. And we've been doing this across multiple nations, 45 countries, 800 plus customers, and growing. So it's a really exciting practice for us and one of our fastest growing. If you hop to the next slide, I did want to just start by perhaps overviewing some of the challenges and trends we're seeing when we talk to these 800 plus customers. First, we're really picking up when we talk to them about what they're doing in maintenance and field operations, this real drive towards operational efficiency. When you look at things like schedule optimization, maintenance campaigns, traditionally maintenance have been done poorly planned and executed with little sense of strategy or urgency. So that increases cost. So when you think about where we're headed, there's really this focus on performing maintenance activities and campaigns. Let's share resources across assets. Let's improve efficiency. Let's look at, offshore heavy manning models, shared resource pools, these mini campaigns that really help optimize things like offshore manning across portfolios through detailed planning and resource management, using standardized procedures to fix all equipment in the area at a given time. Also, standardization is a really big focus right now, because when you look at standardization, it allows oil and gas companies to share these resources across multiple assets. So if you have someone that's skilled in one capability, they can apply that skill set to multiple assets. Also, there's a big realization that this is a very complex supplier ecosystem. So we have the operators and the vendors, and those vendor relationships are becoming increasingly more important when you think about maintenance optimizations. High performance organizations really understand the value of collaboration across the value chain and making sure those agreements have flexibility to allow people to throttle up and down resources. We're also seeing a really big focus on operational intelligence. So what I mean by that is applying advanced analytics for maintenance. I think when you look at the upstream oil and gas industry in particular, we've tried a lot of different strategies for different equipment types, but really it's all been time-based, meaning that it follows a sketch schedule saying, hey, in 6 weeks I do this, in 8 months I do this. It doesn't really adapt to the changing conditions. So think about oil in your car. When you run it the first 20,000 miles, 40,000 miles, they recommend you get an oil change based on some time parameters. As you run that engine longer, there's different recommendations and parameters. The oil and gas industry has not done a good job of looking at those things. How much have I run this equipment? What kind of conditions? And driving maintenance schedules and programs based on that. But we're seeing a lot of people pick that up. And then the last one, really improved asset connectivity. So of course, in order to do what I just talked about, you have to have connected assets. That's going to allow for war rooms, things like that, to track what's going on and better execute. So when you look across all these trends, we're seeing a lot of upheaval in traditional field operations in the oil and gas industry. And that poses a lot of challenges, but I think we can also look at that as a lot of opportunity. When you see disruption and challenges, that's a lot of opportunity for people to make stair-step improvements and perhaps pass some of their competitors. And we'll look at ways in a second that people can do that. If you hop to the next one, the other really big trend we're seeing that's probably permeated throughout everything I just talked about is this transition away from the traditional field worker to what I call the digital knowledge worker. Oil and gas companies have been moving from a world of manual processes, data silos, complexity, paper forms, really disconnected experiences, to a world of integration, simplicity, optimized work scheduling, guided workflows, self-service experiences, and anywhere, anytime access. Historically, this industry has been very process and engineering focused, and I think that's important. But what we're seeing now is people really augment that with a new people-centric approach focused on the field worker, the experience of the field worker, and really driving digital transitions based on that. And I think when you do that, you're going to see really drastic stair-step changes in productivity, efficiency, et cetera. And the industry is really starting to realize that digital transformation with maintenance operations in particular is really critical to future success. So think about the field worker. They need to be better enabled to be productive. That ecosystem of suppliers I talked about, contractors, third-party people outside your firewalls, they need to be better enabled. Field work needs to be driven by information, not intuition. We need data. We need scheduling optimization. We need to work prioritization to tell our field technicians what is the next best action or piece of work they need to do. The tools need to be agile, proactive for people to be effective. And we haven't talked too much about, the big talent gap, but as we all know, there's been a migration away from the oil and gas industry. We're really struggling to find that next generation of talent. So when you provide great user experience with field tools, it's really a great way to help acquire, retain, cross-skill, upskill that next generation of talent. So at a high level, just some trends we're seeing. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Naeem, and he's going to really go a little bit deeper into field operations and asset maintenance and talk about some of the capabilities, value props, and use cases. So with that, Naeem, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thanks, Jason. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. For those of you I haven't met before, I'm Naeem Khalid, the VP of Professional Services here at Diabsolut. A little bit about my background. I've been working within field service technologies for about 20 years. My focus has been really around the utilities and energy space. And I've kind of played different roles throughout my career, from solution architect, where I was building solutions, to now managing the delivery teams that help enable our customers to get an ROI and then a success in their organization. So as Jason mentioned, I'm going to focus a little bit more on how Salesforce, Youreka, and Diabsolut kind of help businesses improve their field operations, get better visibility into their assets, and ultimately increase the uptime and availability of assets and the efficiency of their workforce. So, touching upon like the first thing that, or the last thing that Jason was mentioning around communication and digitization, one of the biggest things is around enabling your mobile workforce. So, a lot of legacy operations have disparate applications. They're working from disparate systems. There's a lot of paper. And all this really leads to is a lack of visibility onto what's going on and lack of real-time capabilities. And this is where the platform really kind of excels. Having a mobile application, whether it's the ability of using Youreka smart forms to have a guided process in completing information, whether it's the offline capabilities between Salesforce and Youreka, being able to let them work anywhere, anytime, without any consideration for cell coverage and location, or whether it's the real-time updates that whenever they are connected, that those updates are flowing into the system and providing visibility. All of those enable the mobile workforce to have the latest information at their fingertips. So when they're going to work, access and service those assets, they're able to bring up information around them. Now, that information could be anything from best operating practices, so understanding what the safe operating practices, what is the current safety topics that are important to the organization, what is kind of, gotchas or things that need to be kind of aware of. Again, using digital forms and digital capabilities, you can share that information without them having to carry around bulky paper manuals or reference information. They can have them at their fingertips and be able to kind of access the latest and greatest information. And this kind of plays a key part of the safety process, because, whatever we do, the first thing we always have to consider is, how do we make people safe, right? Before we look at assets and information, we need to make sure we're making people safe. So the ability of the Salesforce platform gives them the ability to do things like, when I'm working in an unsafe area, maybe I'm working in a risky situation, I'm able to kind of let the person know in real time, hey, I'm going to be in an unsafe location. I should be there for a period of time. If I don't check in, there's something wrong. Just being able to kind of build that process into Salesforce and have that real-time capability adds to the level of safety and organization. This also goes into providing operations. We kind of go on to tell people in real time what people are working on, how much time is being spent in those things. When we're diagnosing problems with assets, we want to be able to look at those assets and say, this is a problem, this is the steps I took to resolve it. And what that's really doing is providing operational knowledge. And Jason mentioned that one of the challenges right now is empowering the next level of workforce and finding new people to come into it. Being able to capture all this information, whether it's through a Youreka form where you've kind of captured the steps you've taken to analyze and diagnose a problem, whether it's knowledge articles within the Salesforce platform that are being built of the actions you've taken, whether it's the predictive portion of it, where as you do the different actions, Salesforce is building a predictive knowledge base to work from. So all those things help kind of enable operations to have greater visibility into the system, and then in turn provide better information to their field workforce. And when we talk about field service, one of the biggest things, of course, is optimization. So behind all the planning and exercise that go in, whether it's planned maintenance or emergency maintenance, is the ability to optimize resource schedules and to organize people into efficient teams. So being able to get them to their jobs faster, planning their routes, all of that's kind of a core part of Salesforce field service and how it helps empower the field workforce to spend more time with the tools and working on assets and less time driving around between locations. Again, trying to improve the efficiency and the ROI. Next slide, please. So we're going to see a demo from Peter a little bit into kind of what Salesforce looks like. But kind of the key points I was again hitting on: automated scheduling and optimization, which will help kind of improve the productivity and balance. Empowering mobile workers around offline capabilities, intuitive forms, guided processes. Again, minimizing their clicks and making it as efficient as possible for them to do the work. Passing that information back to the field in an efficient information so that everyone's working from the same information. And then being able to get a real visibility into your assets and understanding what's happening to your assets and how we're actioning changes to those assets. So just the next slide. So I want to just spend a little bit of time talking about some of the use cases that we've kind of encountered and some things that we're seeing within the energy industry. So starting from the left, focusing on the asset maintenance side, we're becoming more and more in a connected world. So where previously we kind of used to have maintenance plans that said, hey, we're going to periodically go visit an asset and look at it and carry out some maintenance. As much as we love to stick with it, things break, and you have to deal with them in an emergency. Those emergencies and urgent actions become disruptive. Where the Salesforce and technology is taking us right now is to connected devices and connected assets. So now the asset is telling you, hey, something's wrong, my production level is dropping, my output's dropping, I've noticed a problem, and they're telling you that there's a problem coming up. So you're not having to wait for someone to go action or someone to visit it. You're getting predictive, hey, something's going to happen to this asset and I can react to it faster, get out there and deal with it. And this leads into the predictive portion of it. The more information you're able to collect on your assets, the better you're able to predict when an asset is likely to fail, and then turn this into more of a planned maintenance activity rather than a reactive maintenance activity. Moving on to the next kind of set of use cases around compliance management. One of the biggest things is being able to capture all the work is done. So whether that's from a regulatory requirement where you have to report back into the various agencies, whether that's from your own internal standards, or whether that's from managing your own contractors, the ability to capture the work that's been completed, be able to capture things like pictures and videos and real-time information as part of the guided form process, all of that being digitized and then available to everyone, provides you with a comprehensive compliance and auditability. So that when someone does question, well, what happened to this asset, or why did a particular situation happen, you're able to kind of really draw upon real digital data in an easy, searchable, kind of controllable way, right? So no longer having to try and go through reams of paper or dig through thousands of bits of kind of information. It's very much all tied together. Hey, this asset, this person went to visit it on so-and-so, this is the problem, this is the pictures, this is the whole history. This is the work that was done. Really shows that how you're complying with the work that's going on. The next part, where again, this is kind of becoming bigger and bigger, especially within the kind of energy space, is around the construction side and the kind of management of the projects. So, we really have two types of work that we see in the field. We have short cycle work, which is kind of in-day type of work that's completed typically in a few hours. And then we have much longer kind of long cycle work. This could be anything from things that take a day to things that take months. What field service kind of allows you to do is to not just track the actual field person going to the site, but start tracking things like materials. What kind of equipment were you using? What assets were installed? As you install those assets, capturing their asset information so they're instantly available within the Salesforce platform, and you can start querying what's happened to the asset, what's going on with it, what work's been done on it. And this is really building a digital image of your organization and your organization's assets. Starting from the installation part of the process and the construction part of the process, and leading all the way down to the service, the in-service and the maintenance of it. You have a full history of the assets, as well as being able to track all the people who've been involved in it, whether that's for knowledge sharing or asking questions, or whether that's to help you focus on the tracking the financials of it. And then lastly, around field service delivery and logistics, optimization and becomes a key part of this. Whether you're hauling materials, whether you're visiting sites and customers, whether you're visiting partners, being able to develop an efficient route is a bread and butter of Salesforce and field service, and is kind of the key thing that ties all this together, is giving you the ability to reduce that time that you're spending driving around and more focus on actually getting the work done. So on that note, I'll hand over back to Peter, I think, who's going to walk us through the demo.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Naeem. So Peter McMullen, I work with Naeem at Diabsolut. I'm a solutions consultant there. I've been working with the company for about 2 years now, and I focus a lot on the Salesforce field service side of things. I've worked with the Youreka team before on opportunities, and I'm really excited to demonstrate some of the features that we've been discussing today. So I'm going to get right into it. I want to make sure that we're taking up as much time as possible focusing on this demonstration. So I'm just going to share my screen here and we'll get into everything. Now, what you should be seeing here, and Gary, if you just want to give me a thumbs up that you're seeing things, perfect. So what you're looking at here is our asset record on Salesforce Field Service. So we've got a 10 kilowatt turbine. That's going to be the focus of our demonstration today. And what I wanted to start off with was really getting into how Salesforce tracks and benefits from the tracking of data on this asset. Now, a lot of this can be done through IoT sensors. It can also be done manually through regular inspections, however your company wants to do that. And I'll be referencing both of those options throughout this demo. But for right now, we're going to focus on the layout of this object. So we've got on the left-hand side here, a lot of the general information, the details on this specific asset, this 10 kilowatt turbine, including its serial number, when it was installed, when it was purchased. We can see that it's owned by Valley Supply Inc. And then on the right-hand side, we've got information associated with the asset. So we've got our cases, the work orders that have been performed or are scheduled in the future for being done on this asset. We've got the warranty, all of the downtime periods that it's gone through, as well as whether they were planned or unplanned. And we've got our maintenance plans. Now, maintenance plans are a fantastic way that Salesforce uses to allow for your team and to support the creation of preventive maintenance structures. So that allows for Salesforce, and this gives you the opportunity to either have a regularly generated work order, either based on a scheduled pattern, so time of month, whether you want it to be weekly, monthly, yearly, or it can be based off of a field on the asset. So for example, here on our 10 kilowatt turbine, we've got this internal temperature field. Now we can schedule and structure our maintenance plan so that If that field goes above or below a certain number, we automatically create a work order. We set it to a high priority because this is a high value asset. And then that automatically gets fed into the system. And we'll kind of follow along with that as we continue on the work order or on this demo. The last thing that I did want to say while we're looking at this asset is how Salesforce handles asset performance. Now, I discussed that there is the downtime periods that are recorded on here, and we can see that two big fields that are supremely important for tracking asset performance are availability and reliability. Availability takes all of the time that this asset should have been up. So we use the uptime record start date and the average uptime per day, and then compares it to the cumulative downtime based off of all records that have been added to this asset. And then that gives you a solid 83.5% that it's available. That's a great number, and it's great to be able to track this to know how often it is available and be able to track for all of your assets using reporting or analytics to be able to then dive in and start to focus on certain preventive maintenance plans for maybe your problem or reimagine them if you want to try new things. Now, our reliability is another big field because that one takes, again, all of the time that it should have been up and then compares it to our cumulative unplanned downtime. This is perfect for assessing whether your existing preventive maintenance plans and structures are working, right? Because you want it to be higher and drastically higher than the availability. You're going to have downtime. You need to maintain the asset. So what you're looking at in reliability is how good is your preventive maintenance plan? And Salesforce really helps you with the availability of these fields to take advantage of this information that you're recording and really action it to improve your business. So we've talked a little bit about our preventive maintenance and this asset. Now, what happens here is we've had either through IoT or through a regular inspection, we have a recording of an internal temperature of 121.5 Fahrenheit. And according to our guidebook for this asset or the decision for the preventive maintenance plan, that is too high. So we're going to automatically drop this asset into downtime, and we're going to automatically create a work order and everything associated with it so that it can be immediately scheduled and go out and begin to get that work done as quickly as possible. Now, while we're talking about scheduling, and we've talked about how Salesforce helps to optimize your schedule to better allow for your technicians to focus on their work rather than on driving around throughout the day and everything like that, let's take a look now at this schedule. Now, here is our view of what's called the Gantt view of our dispatcher console. And this is where our dispatchers live. This is Salesforce's way of creating an interface that requires no swivel chair. They are able to get all of their information, take all actions within this one single page. And you can see that there's a lot going on. On the top right, we've got our KPIs. So total duration of jobs scheduled, average travel time, total number of jobs completed, any jobs that are in jeopardy or that are potentially breaking any scheduling rules that we've created. And we can see we've got that 4 highlighted there. We've got a few of these jobs are overlapping with each other. And so it's important to be able to note that so that our dispatcher can handle things like that. Now, if we had optimized this perfectly, or if we'd used the optimizer, these jobs would not have been scheduled like that. There wouldn't be allowed to be overlapping jobs. So this might be another issue that then we have our dispatcher here to be able to adjust things. To fix things like this, our dispatcher is simply able to just right click and see all of the actions that they have available to them. Some of them include things like flagging the job if they need to flag it for a higher supervisor to be able to get more understanding or it's above their position. There's also a reschedule option, which just uses the optimizing engine to automatically reschedule it. You can go a more manual route and get candidates to be able to select specifically from a list of plausible candidates that have time in their schedule, a list of slots that you can assign this job to. You can also just reshuffle, which uses a more general access. So you're not just focusing on this one job, you're focusing on this technician's day. And then you can have a bunch of other actions here that aren't necessarily associated with fixing the fact that this job is breaking a rule, but just allowing you to see where it is on the map. So allowing you to jump over to the map view immediately, and our dispatcher sees it hopping around there and zoom out and see where in San Francisco we're looking at, or many other options there as well. Now, this is a schedule that has been optimized. So it's important to understand how that functions and how the optimization engine can be used to your company's benefit. So one way that that's done is by running the optimization engine early in the morning, like 3 a.m. or something, so that your schedule isn't hampered or changed throughout the day while people are interacting with it. So for an example, we had our optimization engine run early this morning on this schedule. And the great thing about Salesforce's optimization is that it creates this thing called optimization insights, allowing for you to look at how you've structured your optimization based on your company's preferences, and then see how the optimization engine worked for you to improve things. So let's take a look here at our KPIs. Now, running down the list, the average travel per appointment before optimization was 7 minutes without home base, 13 minutes with. After the optimization, it's dropped by 4 and 8 minutes here. We can see the total schedule appointment jumped by almost 20. The travel has decreased significantly. The total duration schedule has increased by over 20 hours. The utilization has jumped by significant amounts as well. And we can see on the right side the policies that were used to create this optimization. Our work rules, so these are hard and fast, true or false, yes or no rules, and our objectives, which is weighting how we want our optimization to think. Now, we've gone down a path of customer first, so we're wanting to ensure that if they have a preferred engineer, a preferred resource, that's a high weight. We want it to happen as soon as possible for our customer, and we want to minimize travel for us, right? So that our technician is able to perform more jobs, and then also focusing on how much of a priority our internal resource is. We're able to look over all of that very easily every time the optimization engine is run and review that to see how it's working for us, and then potentially adapt things as your company grows and changes. So jumping back on track here with the issue that occurred with our 10 kilowatt turbine, we've come to this page and we're wanting to take a look at, let's say, the work order that was created for that and the service appointment that was used to schedule it. So we can actually double click on this break fix here, and we can see that our work order has already been dispatched. We've got all of this service appointment holding all of this information on the account, the contact, the type of work that needs to be done, and we're automatically creating a window for this work order as well. We can see the earliest start permitted is next week on the 17th, and it's got a 2-day window. So that allows for, because it's high priority, we want to make sure that the things are happening quickly. And we can see that with the optimization engine, we've automatically scheduled it within that window very early on. Moving over to the work order, we've got a bit more detail on what is going on with this request for work. And we can also just click this to jump into the work order and see more information, right? Our dispatch console is allowing for the dispatcher to take a lot of actions and reach out and get as much information as they want or need. On our work order, we can see at the center of the page is a lot of information about the work itself, or the work order itself. And on the side is about the work. So what kind of product do you need? Any associated line items with the work order. We've got a form for completion while we're out on the job, and we'll talk about that a lot more in a few minutes. We can jump into our service appointment. We've also got knowledge articles that can potentially be tied into and attached to the work order for our technician to be able to read while they're out in the field. We've got our health and safety work plan that's automatically added in there. And if there are other work plans associated with this type of work, they'll be tied in automatically as well. So this is really just showing the way that Salesforce interconnects these different aspects, and we're doing very few clicks, but getting a lot of information, both from a dispatcher's point of view, customer service representative's point of view, and a technician's point of view. And speaking of technician, let's get into their point of view in truth here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to step into the mobile app from the point of view of our technician, Alan Reed, who's been assigned to this work order for the turbine. And we'll be able to see how not only Salesforce Field Services mobile app, but also Youreka's mobile app will help in performing the work and recording the details necessary for proper tracking, right? That's how Salesforce is able to really take advantage of a lot of the aspects that we've discussed on that asset. So I'll just look for another thumbs up from Gary here to ensure that you're seeing my screen. Fantastic. So what we're looking at here is our field service, our Salesforce Field Service mobile app. And we're actually on the work order that's been created automatically for this turbine to be worked on. Now, one thing to quickly run through is Salesforce Field Services mobile app and the Youreka mobile app are both created with offline first methodologies so that any work that's performed while using the app, while you're offline, is saved sequentially and timestamped so that when you sync back, when you gain access to connectivity again, it's all synced back at the time that the action was taken as it was timestamped. So the Field Service mobile app and Youreka also have the capability of geofencing. So with respect to field service, that could mean using geofencing to automatically recognize when your technician is within a mile of the job location and changing the status of the work order to in progress or on site, which breaks up that human error sometimes of forgetting to change the status and maybe wrecking some of your analytics sometimes. So with all of that said, let's really get into the meat of this mobile app. We've got on screen here our work order. We can see that, and this is set up for the demo in particular, we can see that we've got that little warning, we're missing some required products so that if our technician is looking at their jobs in the morning, they can recognize, oh, I'm out of this in my van. I need to swing by the depot to pick up this extra stuff, just allowing them to be proactive in their day. We can also see I'm up in Kelowna, BC right now, and the job is scheduled in San Francisco. So we can see there is a decent distance on that map. Typically, they're within the same region, and so you're able to see a much more specific view of the map there. They can get directions within the map, and they can also scroll down, see contact information, and see the asset service history, which is huge. Our technician can go back and see what work has been done previously and go over that work and see what kind of fixes have been performed, if there's any regular issues that he needs to be aware of or anything like that. Now, with all of that in mind, our technician is on site. He's ready to go through this asset maintenance. And so he opens up his actions, and the first thing you see right there is asset inspection and maintenance. Now, the great thing about the way that Salesforce Field Service and Youreka work together is I tap that button and I'm automatically launched into Youreka. It's logged into that specific work order in Youreka, and it opens up that form that we saw, and we can see actually in the bottom left-hand corner of my screen. So all I have to do is tap that form and I'm launched into the form, and now I can begin walking through it. So you can see here, we've got a bunch of information that's already been loaded in there. And then we can start to go through the pre-work safety check. So I'm completing the safety check. Everything is able to be done, so there's no worries there. I can then sign off, sign my initials there to prove that I walked through this, and then I move to the next step. And that's all very quick, right? As a technician, I'm wanting to make this as quick and easy as possible because the real work is what's happening on the turbine in real life. And we're wanting to make sure that it's logged. So we're wanting to make this easy and quick and also beneficial. Like we can see here, we've got a little bit of Youreka's new functionality called Digital Asset Repository. We can tap here and view the picture that our inspector took of the damage. It's quite obvious, the damage there on the turbine. And then that allows us to know maybe beforehand or assess what's happened since the inspector visited to be able to understand where we stand now. Continuing on the form, we can log with a tap of a button. I just tap that little marker and it automatically grabbed my geolocation coordinates. And that is also able to be saved to potentially update the location of our asset if there's some flux in the recordings on our within our Salesforce org. And then we've also got the ability with Youreka to create dynamic questioning. So I'm going to verify that the holding down bolts are tight. Tapping that, I automatically get an image of what acceptable and poor condition of bolts are, and I can use that to make a decision on whether the bolts I'm looking at in front of me are acceptable or poor condition. So I'm going to say they're in good condition, we're all clear here, and actually I can actually go in and take a picture to update on the asset what the bolts look like. Continuing down and continuing to take advantage of that dynamic questioning, I can open up the converter cabinets, I can review what's going on there, and I can even, with the help of Youreka, open up a barcode. I'm just gonna move this on the screen here. I can even open up a barcode and then go to my barcode scanner, and now you should be able to see right there, I've grabbed that barcode number from it and it's automatically checked with the system. And there you go, it says system verified. So you know that you've grabbed the right information. There's no need for fat fingering the information or on the touch screen. Continuing, we're checking for the corrosion. Again, information on the cooling system. We can type in a value here. And then, oh no, okay, so I've typed in the value, the reading, and it's showing, okay, so warning any temperature. So this is, again, this dynamic questioning, giving information and action items to the technician to be able to respond to information that they might not think of off the top of their head. And you can actually see if I try and move forward, I've got an error on this form that's stopping me from moving forward before I fill in the remainder of the information. So I'm going to lock this in and I'm going to move forward, and that error is gone. Now, at the top of the screen here, we're able to lock in work order line items associated with any products that we've consumed on this job. So we've already got a CVU1 on this. We can add more, or we can go into this existing work order and adjust, let's say, the quantity, and we're automatically calculating based off of the quantity, the price. So we can see we've got the total price here. We're able to capture any of the customer's comments on the inspection, get the customer's name. So we have May, and we can actually have her fill this out for an approval place, and we can capture her signature. So I'll write down her initials there, and then the date of the signature is today, the 11th, lock that in, and then we hit submit, and it's going to check to make sure that everything's been done properly. And then it's going to send us automatically right back to the Salesforce field service mobile app. Just had a little bit of an issue there, but it automatically sends us right back to that app without us needing to click back and forth between different apps. It's done automatically so that we're able to not have to worry about how that is being done or tapping between screens and things like that. It's all done for us automatically, and that's been completed. So thank you very much for the time. That is the end of my demo today. And I will pass it back to Gary for the continuation of this webinar.
Peter, excellent job. Great demonstration. Some really powerful data points and a real nice seamless experience that you'd walk through. Great story to tell around break fixes. I also want to mention that there are a ton of other use cases. So if anyone on our webinar today, if you have any questions, pop them into the QA portion. We'll address those in just a moment there. But if you see an application for this technology as it applies to break fixes, let us know. There's also a ton of energy organizations that are using this for job safety assessments, timesheets, vegetation management, turbine maintenance, well pad inspections, charge stations, meter swaps, many more use cases. So let us know if you have any questions around any of those. We're happy to address any of those. But great work, Peter. Appreciate it. Let's transition to a quick fireside chat with our panel of experts here. We'll dig deeper into a couple of real-world applications and explore a selection of client use cases leveraging the full capabilities of the trifecta, Salesforce, Youreka, and Diabsolut. And then we'll dig in and see how it has resulted in significant impact and transformation out in the field. So if I may, Jason, earlier on, I loved how you took some of the challenges that we addressed from the energy world, and we started to look at those as opportunities. I loved the positive spin there because they really are opportunities to optimize the organization. So when I think of these huge projects, it seems like it could be a daunting task, especially for these large enterprise organizations. So if you could you please kick it off and let us know, how do companies get started with these types of large projects?
Yeah, thanks, Gary. That's a great question. And Peter, amazing demo. When you look at all that cool stuff that Peter showed, it can be pretty daunting. That's kind of the vision, end goal, but how do you get there? And what I like to tell companies is start small, think big, scale fast. And a really good example of that in practice is what BP did. So BP is a really big Salesforce customer. Specifically, they have an application they call the Global Operator Workbench. And where their idea was like, we got to treat the asset like the customer. So in short, they migrated all their scheduling, dispatching, and work capture of routine maintenance activities for their offshore drilling rigs to the Salesforce platform. When we talk about, think big, start small, scale fast, how did they do that? First of all, they thought big and they had a vision. So coming into this, they said, you know what? We have some initial requirements. We want to provide operating discipline. So the initiative was to enable tasks to be performed correctly every time, standardize, really removing workflow barriers and create an efficient workforce. They also wanted to provide those technicians on the platform with a single pane of glass. So that would enable that site workforce to access everything they needed via the mobile application, similar to what Peter just showed us. And then finally, they wanted to modernize the workforce. So we talked a little bit, both in my section, Naeem's sections, about, how do we make sure we're attracting and retaining that next generation of talent? So they wanted to upskill their workforce. And they thought providing collaborative tools to allow them to work more efficiently and help modernize the experience was really going to, A, drive better outcomes of work, and B, really attract that next level of field talent. So how did they do that? We talked about the vision. They actually brought a lot of the key stakeholders together for a 3-day app innovation and workshop. So it was the platform workers, safety inspectors, maintenance people, procedure people, back office support, IT, engineering. And they put everyone in a room over those 3 days. They whiteboarded. They looked at a 24-hour shift duties. How does the handover happen? Routine maintenance, rounds, all that stuff together. There was a lot of whiteboarding, prototyping. The powers that be, Salesforce, the implementation team, the IT people, then took all those ideas back, came up with a working prototype, and they ran out a 3-month pilot program. So they developed a prototype. They ran a 3-month pilot program on specific Gulf of Mexico offshore platforms. Were very successful, and then start rolling that out broadly. So when we talk about scaling fast, they identified success, they iterated, they failed fast, they found what they needed to do, they tweaked it. And once those 3 months were over, they start rolling out broader, both to a broader user base and enhanced capabilities. So they went live in 3 phases. They started with the collaboration between shifts. They moved into some of the mobile device for rounds and procedures. And then finally, they integrated their supply chain. So think about vendor connections, things like that for predictive maintenance and management. So a little bit of the story of how they executed and went on their journey. And at the end of the day, they really saw some amazing metrics around improved safety, increased workforce efficiency, increased collaboration, and higher reliability.
Awesome, Jason. Really appreciate it. I love that. Start small, think big, scale fast. How powerful that is. Let's start by digitizing some of these processes, and then over time, we can start to build out more processes, expand inside of the organization, and drive a lot of automation based on the insights that we have captured on platform. Thank you very much. Very helpful there. Naeem, kicking off from that question, these are, from a high level, they're very large projects. And what are some of the key benefits that some of our energy organizations can get from some of these large projects?
Thanks, Gary. And I love that catchphrase. I'm going to keep that in mind. And it's probably a good way of looking at kind of one of our next use cases, Marathon Oil. Start small, think big, scale fast. So what we kind of did with Marathon Oil was really focused around their field operations, around their water hauling process. And you'll see at the bottom, you'll kind of see some of the key ROI metrics. But that, the first one, 9 weeks to deploy in Permian Basin. So from start to finish, we took a very important use case to them. We focused on a pilot area and we deployed something within just over 2 months. And what the real focus of this use case was just specifically around taking a process which had a lot of manual steps in it, which had a lack of visibility, which had a kind of a lot of potential for mistakes and lost revenue, and turned it into a digitized process. So we created a water hauling process where everything was automated. So from the point of order creation, from when the wells were telling them that they needed to offload water, automating the scheduling process, the selection of the vendors, getting the job out to the vendor, getting them to complete the work, capturing all the efforts that they did on it. Significantly kind of, you look at the metric down there, like an 82% reduction in supplier base across all assets. And that's not just for the Permian Basin. That number is really reflective of how we rolled out this whole water hauling digitization process across Marathon Oil. During the pilot, there's a significant kind of ROI, over $2 million in savings during the 6-week pilot, and a huge ROI return within the first year. And what the kind of focus is, and this is really how you approach the project, is understanding what your goal is. So as Jason mentioned, is you need to have a vision, right? And the vision here for Marathon was automation. How do we automate this process and reduce the chances of mistakes and improve our compliance with our kind of metrics as well? So they focused on that, and then they had a plan and they executed, and once they've kind of rolled out the first geography, scaling it up to more and more parts of the organization, more and more vendors, became a really simple thing to do. And so this became an instant success and became kind of the basis for their continued work within field operations and enhancing their solutions as they keep going on. Thanks, Gary.
Thank you, Naeem. And what compelling data points. 82% reduction, 900% ROI after the first year. Really, really powerful stuff, and appreciate the story. I want to pause real quick. We're towards the end of our webinar. I want to see if we have any questions from the audience. Please, if you do have any questions, now's the time. Please engage. Let us know what those questions are. Drop them into the webinar chat or the QA, and we will address those now. We'll pause for another couple of seconds. You guys have been very patient. Appreciate you sticking with us for the length of the webinar. And we'll give it another minute or so. We'll see if any of these questions start to trickle in. We'll address them as we can. And then we'll wrap everything up here in just a second. Doesn't look like we're getting any questions quite yet, but looks like we have one thought here in the webinar chat, which is around what does the integration between Salesforce and Youreka, how does it work, and how are forms built? And so I'll just address that real quickly, that Youreka is 100% a native application on the Salesforce platform. So we are a collection of objects and automation on Salesforce. And so the integration itself, users are using their same Salesforce credentials to log in. And so there's no separate technology, no communication outside of Salesforce to external servers or anything like that. So a native application. And forms, the authoring of forms is a really powerful story. It's a drag and drop user interface. We have some customers where they have business users, super users that are authoring templates. We don't necessarily need a new column, so they don't have to reach out to the IT side of things to create a new field on an object. They can simply create a new question on their template canvas by dragging and dropping it in. And some of our customers have the business authoring and changing some of their templates and versions from one time to the next. Great point there, Sonia. Appreciate that talking point. Let's see if we have any additional questions, and if not, I'd say we can wrap a few minutes early. We've got one more minute here. Naeem, another interesting point. So how easy is it for users to get the information? You're talking about field technicians out in the field to get their data?
Yeah, thanks, Ray. So, I think we were kind of talking about all the information available. This is kind of one of the good things about working on the Salesforce platform and working with Youreka. all the data is on platform. And what that means is everyone, whether you're a back office manager, whether you're an executive, whether you're an operations dispatcher, within the security of the platform, can access whatever information that they've been given access to. So you could easily, as a user, create a report and say, hey, show me all the history of an asset, what work was done on it, when was it done, the downtime, and it really is kind of a drag and drop capability to be able to build that information. So it's not just the ability to capture information in the field, it's the ability to be able to report on that information, create dashboards, and it really empowers the user. So it doesn't matter where you're capturing that data, whether it's in Youreka, or it's in Salesforce field service app, whether it's on platform, all of that data exists in one system and it's all tied together in a really easy to access way. And that information also works for the field service, by giving them the ability to access that data whenever they need to, whether they're online or offline.
Beautiful, really powerful, online or offline. I can even look up existing records loaded directly on my device in the most remote locations. Very powerful. All right, greatly appreciate that. I think we are good to wrap things up. I want to thank Diabsolut, Salesforce, and Youreka, all the teams that went together to put this webinar together. Naeem, Jason, Peter, great work today. Appreciate all the insights. And to our participants, thank you for sticking with us. And if you're interested in any of these solutions, if you have any questions, please reach out to us. We'll do our best to get back to you as quickly as possible, but really appreciate your time today. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.